Hello, I'm Pip Courtney and welcome to A Taste of Landline. We've gone across the country to bring you the very best in food, farming and more. On the show today, the Australian coconut craze.
We collect coconuts, open them up, get the meat out and flavour them and turn them into chips.
Fighting fires with ancient practices. And the retired chefs on an outback adventure.
We really wanted to go to a remote area and a rural area, so we thought we'd try it the other side of the world.
Hello, I'm Courtney Wilson. Coconuts have boomed in popularity in recent years, but go looking on your supermarket shelves and you'd be hard-pressed to find many Australian-grown coconut products. One young entrepreneurial Far North Queensland couple is working to change that. Life in Australia's unofficial coconut capital sure is beautiful. But it's not all fun and frivolity under the palms. Believe it or not, tropical paradise actually requires a fair amount of hard work.
We've got climbing spikes, you obviously got a harness for safety, you got a rope and a flip line. Your flip line is your first anchor point. You get up there, you put a rope through the crown of the palm, and that's where you come down on.
He goes up palms to protect the public. The council doesn't want coconuts landing on people's heads.
We certainly want to keep our iconic palms. They're part of our laid-back tropical ambience. But we also want to make sure that our visitors and locals are safe and that they're not exposed to the risk of a falling coconut.
Jim Scott and his team maintain about 1,400 of the council's coconut palms. And there are a bunch of other arborists competing for the work. It's physical and constant. A mature coconut palm can produce up to 100 nuts every year. Is that what you would expect to see in a tree twice a year?
Yeah, a little bit heavier than that, but that's a little bit heavier than average, but probably about 7 or 8 months worth of coconuts there, so.
The average palm in Port Douglas is about 15 metres tall, although there are some nudging 20 metres. Think a 7-storey building. On an average day, the men will climb and work on around 40 trees. But boss Jim Scott holds the record for the most trees done in one day.
I don't know if it's a state record, but yeah, we reckon it's a record, 64.
Yes, you heard it right. 64 trees in one day. That's a lot of coconuts. Which begs the question, what happens to them?
The bigger coconuts obviously we use, so we've got a couple of people we supply them to.
While some families bring a bucket and spade to the beach, the Willets bring their wheelbarrow.
Well, here's a good coconut though.
You got these ones.
Today is a harvest day.
We collect coconuts, open them up, get the meat out and flavour them and dehydrate them, turn them into chips.
The business began as a hobby about 4 years ago.
I started trying to figure out how can I get the kids to eat this and how can we eat it. So we had tried coconut chips previously and I said, well, let's start with that.
Friends started taste testing the coconut chips and that led to selling small bags at the local markets, and before long, a thriving little business was born.
I got a text one day from a lady saying, I just bought your coconut chips. I'm in Sydney. I was up in Port Douglas on holidays. Where can I buy some? And we started just getting inquiry from shops, cafes, restaurants, just bakeries, all sorts of things.
Once they've collected enough coconuts, the Willets take them home. Dehusking the nuts is one of the hardest parts of the job and the most time-consuming.
The green coconut's pretty soft, like the young stuff with the young jelly meat. You can sort of pretty much get in with like even a bread knife. The brown ones are the hardest, I believe. Just so dry, the husk sort of sticks together a lot harder. We've got a coconut tool that we use to get the meat flesh out.
Once the flesh is removed, it's washed and then finely sliced. Then the fun part, adding flavour.
At the moment, we have 7 flavors. We've got plain, Himalayan salt, sweet chili, maple, vanilla, chocolate. We had a curry and a sweet, which we've actually phased out, but we're sort of working on a few things, like a salted caramel. And I've just bought some salt, gourmet salt from a farmer in Tasmania.
And what would be your most popular flavour, do you reckon?
Oh, it's either the maple or the cinnamon, for sure.
The Willets now send their coconut chips all over the country. Dehydrators run basically around the clock so Casey and Jessie can meet demand. But there are plenty of people wanting more.
We often get asked for coconut oil, coconut milk, coconut cream, coconut water. Hey guys, got a delivery?
It's not that there aren't plenty of coconut products already on the market, it's just that they're not Australian.
I would bet $100 no one can walk into the average shop in Australia and find an Australian coconut product at all.
There's a real fad at the moment about drinking coconut water. But Paul Richardson has been drinking it since way before it was trendy.
To us, it's this champagne connoisseur experience of, oh, that one's really worth drinking, or that one's, you should try it. But not all the bunches on the tree are at that stage.
Paul came to live in far north Queensland in his 30s. He became so invested in coconuts that he even invented a tool to help people get into them.
You see that the nut starts up here and ends up down about there, so you go just below the middle.
So how old's this one? Around about?
Yeah, they'd be 9 months old, just naturally fizzy, and then after that...
It has, it's got a little bit of fizz, not a huge amount, but a bit. He's patented his invention and sold his self-manufactured cocoa tap across the globe.
Mainly Florida and Hawaii is a sort of place where this culture is alive and they can afford a decent tool for it. I think it's gone into more than 80 countries.
Paul Richardson really believes Northern Australia has the potential to tap into a far greater coconut industry if it's done right.
It'd be nice to see premium coconut processing in North Queensland, but it's not to compete with imports, but just because you can never really import as fresh as you can produce here.
He believes the key to getting locally grown and produced coconut products on the market is education, so people understand what's good and what isn't.
The price that people are willing to pay for an imitation coconut product, that's become the driver of what I have to climb trees for. Short chain and medium chain fatty acids as fat for fuel. It's an incredibly restorative thing for a body that's sort of starved of nutrition.
Who knew there was quite so much to the humble coconut? Safety, entrepreneurship, health and free trade. But in the push to develop Northern Australia, perhaps the best days for Australian coconuts are still to come.
On 3, guys. 3, 2, 1.
We have it within our men's shirt business, our men's knitwear and also our men's t-shirt business as well, and are always looking at new ranges that we can convert to Australian cotton.
Yeah, beautiful.
of the cotton here, getting better and better.
Hi, I'm Christy O'Brien in Arnhem Land. Indigenous people have been using fire for centuries, but a group of Indigenous rangers have reinvigorated the practice by fusing traditional knowledge with modern science to create the world's first carbon project using fire. Gupperwanamu is the main outstation in the Wanakan Indigenous Protected Area in the Northern Territory. It's extremely remote, a 9-hour drive from Darwin through thick bush, dozens of river crossings and unmarked roads. Indigenous people have brought back to life their traditional burning practices using modern techniques, and it's got the science world intrigued. It's here the West Arnhem Land Fire Abatement Project was born. A project that uses fire very differently.
We weren't sure if we were going to succeed. We were Australia's first and world's first carbon project using fire, so we weren't sure if it was even a doable thing, especially with the whole idea that early burning by lighting fires, we were going to prevent more carbon by being released into the atmosphere. Sounded fairly crazy to a lot of people.
It's come about after a perfect storm. Fire contributes up to 4% of Australia's annual greenhouse gas emissions. Here in Arnhem Land, uncontrolled bushfire would wipe out 40% of the land, many caused by nature or careless people.
We're sitting on the West Arnhem Plateau. This is the biological crown jewels of the Northern Territory. So to see it being trashed by unmanaged fire was just not acceptable.
Dean Yabarbuk has deep ties to this country, but is also a fire ecologist who's been able to work closely with scientists from across the world on this project.
Family used to go out and do their little burning work, but with these projects, carbon projects, as a fire management.
When day breaks, it's burning time. A plan is drafted and jobs allocated.
So 2 on side? Yeah, we got 2 going both sides maybe, make it a bit wide.
The rangers deliberately burn small patches of grass that's not too dry. They make a pattern which then connects up. The idea is to reduce the fuel or grass using controlled and somewhat cooler fire. When burnt, it'll be harder for a bushfire to take hold later in the year, when the area dries out and is more flammable.
We're reducing all the hot fires to making a better and low flames on the ground, and it's good for environment. When we see the fires real hot, and that's a bit scary. It chases animals, it destroys habitats as well.
The ranger projects have seen young people shun town life and return to the bush to look after their homelands.
What I like about ranger work, it's good to go out and look up to country, do some burning, instead sitting down. The community is a bit boring for us.
It's special, and that no one never been here. So yeah, it's really like wonderful out here. Being on a country, working on land, managing, because we need to protect the land, keep it safe, keep it healthy, keep it where it's meant to be.
When we first started, it was like a remote stock camp 50 years ago, and it was a handful of guys that were committed to the project, to now where it's almost a small town. Lots of young, enthusiastic people that want to be part of this project, and some funds being pumped back into a community in remote communities where there's generally not all that many opportunities for making a buck.
Each year, the group, which includes about 200 rangers, reduce emissions by up to 40%. That's about 100,000 tonnes of greenhouse gases. They sell the credits to the federal government through the Carbon Emissions Reduction Fund and private companies, including mines. It was in fact a deal with ConocoPhillips that allowed them to get their start in the carbon market, when a major partnership was signed in 2006 to offset emissions at their LNG gas plant near Darwin.
So offsetting the emissions that they were releasing, so abating up to 100,000 tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions from this project each year to help them offset, and that was a condition of their operating licence.
But there's more at stake than just environment and even the economic incentive. This is about preserving culture.
Yeah, it's important for me because probably when my son grow up, and I'm going to teach him how to, teach him how to go out bush and do burnings and stuff, managing a country.
One recent benefit to the burning has also been the discovery and preservation of hundreds of rock art sites. In this one clump, there's a work illustrating first contact with police, daily life including animals, and more mythical characters, illustrating their beliefs. There is estimated to be more than 30,000 sites just in this region. Most have never been seen by white people, and some were even lost to the local Indigenous population who found them while doing the burn-offs. The women rangers now have the job of clearing the sites of fuel, the idea being bushfire won't travel through and damage the works.
It is important for our children when they grow up and they see what we are doing now, and when they grow up they're going to do the same as we are doing.
A mission they accept willingly in a bid to protect their land and life.
We've been burning from thousands of years. Even the colonization appeared in our country, we've still been burning. And this is a very big thing for us, because once you lose those tools, then there's no better way of looking after and managing the country.
We don't want to catch bycatch. We want to find ways of getting it out of the net before the nets are landed.
It's not only the reduction of fish. By reducing the fish, it means we can catch more prawns.
Abingdon Downs Station is 100 k's down that dirt road. For two retired Brisbane chefs, taking this road led to one of the best jobs in their 50-year cooking careers. In April, two chefs traded retirement for an outback adventure their friends called crazy.
There were lots of wallabies, and we saw our first brolga marching along the road that way, and the cattle. It's a good introduction to outback life.
Brisbane couple Anita and Jens Stefan drove nearly 2,000 kilometres north to take up the cook's job on a cattle station in Queensland's Gulf country. At just under 500,000 hectares, Abingdon Downs is one of the larger developed stations in the Gulf, running 16,000 Brahmins. The Steffens' job was to feed station owners Campbell Keogh and Anita Ganza, 10 staff, visiting contractors, the workers' children and governesses. And they had to get it right.
The cooks is probably the most important role on the property at times. You've got to have that good tucker to keep your staff up and running and keep them happy.
Anita and Jens ran their own restaurants, catering companies and a butchery in Scotland, Germany and the US before moving to Australia a decade ago. To these suburban new Australians, being in the far north of Queensland was like being in another country. Different climate, customs and taste buds.
We really wanted to go to a remote area and a rural area, and 50 years ago in Scotland, we lived in a very rural area, and so we thought we'd try it the other side of the world.
The hours are long here, 4 in the morning till 8 at night, 5 days a week. They cook breakfast, morning and afternoon smoko, lunch and dinner. As well, they prepare the tucker for the ringers, who work away for weeks at a time at the station's 2 mustering camps. The Stephens brief? Nourishing, wholesome food and lots of it.
They really want a steak and onion gravy once a week, and they love shepherd's pie, and then roasts, of course. Those are the most popular of them all.
The biggest surprise for staff was fresh bread every day.
Nita happened to mention to me that she makes her own sourdough and ciabatta bread, and I love ciabatta bread and sourdough. I mentioned it in passing that I like it, and the next day came down about 3 loaves of bread this big.
Look at those beans. Look, they're in flower already.
With the nearest big town, Atherton, 4 hours drive away, fresh veggies were not easy to get. So Jens and Anita spent a lot of time in the vegetable garden.
Well, everything that we grew, the beautiful beans and peas and courgettes and pumpkins that are coming on. So because we're restricted in the amount of vegetables and especially herbs, it was very useful to be able to grow our own. That's us.
Smoko is a ritual on stations. German-born Jens didn't know what it was. Once they'd worked out it was morning and afternoon tea, their chefing skills came to the fore. Their smoko spreads became legendary. A big hit was a lemon cake with an outback touch, rum drizzle. Jens's elegant fruit platters increased fruit consumption. Before, whole fruit was laid out but little was eaten. Now it all goes. Anita Ganser was surprised by the chef's attention to detail.
I'd be mesmerised watching Jens when he'd plate up the salad, the meat platter for lunch, and every slice had to be that far apart from each other or lay it over. And if it wasn't, he'd adjust it and, painstakingly.
Having fine dining chefs on station wasn't without its hiccups though. It took the chefs a while to adjust to their customers' palates.
I made mashed potatoes and peas and put mint in it, and I was told the following morning that they wouldn't eat it. Well, it was a learning curve, I tell you. But yes, I was disappointed, but then we've learned, and they have learned as well, we've come together.
I think they were surprised how plain. Meat and 3 veg, Holbrook sauce, salt and pepper. From that to...
Food names I don't even know.
Big hits, chocolate mousse, pies and sausage rolls with homemade pastry, English muffins, enchiladas, quiche and fluffy, lump-free mashed potato.
And curries with coconut milk, they like that. They probably hadn't had that before because I brought ground spices with me, Indian spices, and I think they had only had keens. So it was a different flavour.
They are exceptional. I'm having to go on a diet now. Their pastries are just to die for, and temptation is just too much for me.
The all-time station favourite, crumbed steak, had both Anita and Jens flummoxed.
I never heard of it actually. Crumbed steak, yeah. Crumbed schnitzel and this sort of things, chicken breasts, but never a steak.
So what did the staff think?
I didn't think coming onto a station it would be this good, but it's pretty amazing the food that's coming out.
Jans cooks a mad T-bone. They're the best T-bones.
I love their quiche. Their quiche and their Anzac biscuits are by far my favourite.
I put on 2 kilos since I've been here, so that's a bonus.
During their stay, the couple found plenty of interest outside the kitchen.
Come on, Chooks.
For Jens, time with his girls was a highlight.
Feeding time. Okay, guys.
Late afternoon, he amused all with his chicken Pied Piper routine.
We got 15 out of 18 eggs. Enough for breakfast tomorrow morning.
The couple say they weren't bothered by the isolation or the heat. They didn't mind not having a TV, limited internet access, or getting a newspaper once a week.
We are both 74. I think there's a lot of scope for retired chefs to come out here and really enjoy this sort of life.
I could not think of a single solitary negative aspect about being here in Abingdon for the last 6 months. It's just been heaven.
That's all for this week. Thanks for your company. And remember to check us out on Facebook, where there's plenty to keep you entertained. Next time on A Taste of Landline, we're off to school with man's best friend.
Ben's my dog pretty much since he was a pup.
The perks of urban agriculture and growing the perfect wine to wash down oysters.
Bang! Just, wow, this is such a match for oysters.